Hello and welcome to another episode where we attempt to fall asleep, but we succeed because we have the help of Habibi Spice, me. Tonight, I am going to be telling you a story. This story could be you. This story could happen to somebody you know. It could happen to anyone. That's why it's important to listen, to be thoughtful, lay down, and pay attention, because what's about to happen could be happening to you one day. So you need to know how to act. You need to know how to act accordingly, to act professionally, to act, to adapt. So it was nighttime, just like now. It is nighttime, and it is winter. It is cold. So it is a winter night. Jimmy is sitting in his apartment on the second floor, overlooking a quiet street. He lived on the edge of town, so it wasn't busy. There was no street noise. He could only hear the crickets outside. Jimmy appreciated a good night's sleep, just like everybody else. Jimmy appreciated clean bed sheets, fresh, warm, clean bed sheets. Jimmy also did not like to walk in a puddle of water with his socks. You know when you walk on water and you're wearing clean socks? Or you step in water in the kitchen and you're like, oh my God, Ya Allah, now I have to change my socks. Jimmy hated that. Jimmy's apartment was a loft, open floor plan, and it had a window towards the street, so you could see the street. Maybe a window as big as this one next to his bed, but multiple like this, 1, 2, 3, 4 along the wall, and the rest of the walls were brick, red brick. He had wood floors. Now Jimmy was getting ready for bed on this very cold evening. It was raining outside very hard. It was raining. He enjoyed the sound of the rain because it soothed him. He thought it was cozy. He thought it was cinematic. So Jimmy was brushing his teeth and listening to the sounds of nature. He was excited to get in his bed and get warm. So he finished up brushing his teeth, and then he walked toward his bed. When he walked around, he wore these slippers in the apartment, so he could not feel that when he got next to his bed something was wrong. He took off his slippers, sat on his bed, and when he lay his head on the pillow, he noticed that the pillow and the area underneath his shoulders on the upper bed, guess what? It was wet. It was wet. He was surprised. He thought to himself, I remember closing all the windows because I heard on the news the day before that it was going to rain. So he knew it was going to rain, and he knew he closed the window. So maybe there was a mistake. Maybe the bed is not wet? No, that's not where the mistake is. The bed was wet indeed. He looked back, he got up from the bed and looked back at the window. He noticed that the window above his bed was leaking. Ya Allah, it's leaking. He doesn't have time to deal with this. And he cannot move his bed. Why? Because the bed is already wet. And if he moved his bed, he would still have to wait for it to dry. So he would not be going to sleep until very, very late. And Jimmy liked to sleep early. The rain is still raining. The weather is still weathering. And the cold is still colding. Jimmy looked through his closet for new sheets. He thought, if I could move the bed forward, change the sheets, I will worry about the leak of the window in the morning. I would probably call somebody because I'm not very handy myself. That's what Jimmy is thinking. So he opened his closet and he saw that all his sheets were already in the wash. Jimmy, just like you, does not do his laundry very often. Jimmy, just like you, has a pile of laundry waiting to be washed in this moment. And all his sheets are in that pile, along with clothing, shorts, shirts, jackets, sweaters, socks, pants, and a couple of $5 bills he forgot in the pockets. Now, he thought to himself, I do not have new sheets, and I have wet sheets. What can I do? Can I sleep on the floor? No, that is not comfortable. What do you think Jimmy will do? What would you do? If you had money, maybe you would buy a hotel or even motel room to save some money, and you will sleep with peace of mind. Unless you are a germaphobe, then you will be like, this motel not very clean. Who sleep in this bed before me? Did they wash the sheets before me? Are there any bed bugs in here? Will I bring the bed bugs back home? You know how it is. But if you're a normal person who does not care, you pay $100 or $150, you spend the night, you're okay. But Jimmy could not afford a night at a hotel or a night at a motel. He sat on the dry side of his bed, far from the window, and he was thinking. His head sunk into his hands. What can I do to fall asleep tonight? I could maybe put my head on the opposite side, keep my feet in the wet, or even sleep diagonally so my feet are sticking out and not touching the wet. But that is not comfortable enough for Jimmy. Jimmy loves to sleep. He loves to sleep soundly. The environment is perfect, except for one variable, which is the wet sheets. As Jimmy was thinking, there was a knock at the door. Jimmy was surprised. His building is not very well visited by strangers, and his neighbors usually keep to themselves. So whoever could be knocking right now could not possibly have good intentions, for it is very late at night. For Jimmy, at least, it's only 9:45 p.m. He looks at the door and ponders opening it. When a second knock comes, a bit more extreme than the first one, as if there is a sense of urgency within the knocker's knuckles. He takes a deep breath, gets up, puts on his slippers that were a bit wet now because they were in the wet area. But he brushes it off for now, for he has a bigger problem to deal with. He slowly walks towards the door, and he does not have a peephole. So he tries to put his ear into the door to listen. Maybe he could get some sort of sound that would indicate who might be knocking. And as his ear got close to the door, another knock. He was startled. He took another deep breath. He opens the door. And he is surprised to see a short-statured old man, around 60, 70 years of age, holding a briefcase, smiling at him and looking at him, almost menacingly smiling, as if he knows something that Jimmy does not know. Let's wait for this helicopter to pass, thought Jimmy. There we go. The man does not say a word. He just smiles and stares creepily at Jimmy. He was a bit shorter than Jimmy. Not too much, maybe 1 or 2 feet. But Jimmy was not a tall guy. Jimmy was around 5'8", let's say. I haven't measured Jimmy. The things that I measure are usually attached to me, not to other people. Anyway, Jimmy looks at the guy, very scared. This old man breaks his gaze from Jimmy for a little bit and peeks behind his shoulder as if he's looking towards the bed. Jimmy looks back and then looks at the man. Jimmy says, "Excuse me, can I help you?" The old man says, "I believe I can help you." Jimmy was intrigued. He say, "How come? How so?" The old man responds with, "I have something you might need at the moment." And Jimmy thought to himself, this could be a man who might pay for a night at a motel so that I can sleep soundly away from my wet bed. But he did not want to spell it out for the man. He wanted to see what the man thinks first, what the man brought forth for him. "How can you help me?" he says. The old man says, "I might be able to provide you with what you need for a good night's sleep." And then he glances at his briefcase, and then back at Jimmy, and then goes back into his menacing smile, and then looks at him without breaking, without blinking. Jimmy looks at the briefcase. "What do you have for me?" he asks. The old man says, The briefcase contains whatever you think it might contain that might help you achieve what you want. Now, Jimmy, like you and me, he has hopes and dreams. Jimmy, like you and me, he has financial needs. Jimmy, like you and me, he has physical needs. He has healthy needs. You need to eat in the morning when you're hungry. You need to pay your bills. Jimmy was not very well set in life, and he was thinking to himself, this old man might have what I need to be set in life, or he might just have some money to give me so I can go sleep at a hotel. But the briefcase was medium size, a normal size business briefcase. It could have contained anything. May I ask what's in the case again, sir? He exclaims. The old man says once again, the case will contain what you think you need for contentment. So Jimmy is scared now because he does not know what he needs for contentment. There could be many answers to this question. May you help me, sir? I'm not sure what you mean. The old man says, I am pretty sure you know. And then, once again, he glances back at his bed. So Jimmy is adding up the equation in his head. Could this man have fresh sheets for me? Could I perhaps move the bed forward, change the sheets that this man has, and then get a good night's sleep? So Jimmy asks, do you happen to carry bed sheets in this briefcase, sir? The old man says, if bed sheets are what you need for contentment, then bed sheets are what I have. Now Jimmy knows that bed sheets will give him contentment, and then they will give him contentment enough to sleep the night. But he knew that the man meant more than this. What if Jimmy wanted contentment for more than just one night? Maybe he could go through this night, he could power through it with a wet bed in exchange for what he really wants in life. Or maybe he could get the good night's sleep he very well wishes to have tonight. The old man once again says, would you like the content of the briefcase, young child? Jimmy wants to know once and for all what's inside. And he goes, will the content of the briefcase help me with my sleep? And the man says, that depends on what keeps you up at night. Is it your bills? Is it your pain? Your physical pain? Your mental pain or emotional pain? Or might it be a noisy neighbor? Jimmy knows that his neighbors do not make any noise. Jimmy, like you and me, and like everybody else, does carry pain, emotionally and physically. Jimmy, like you and me, does carry pain financially as well. But Jimmy, unlike you and me, has wet bed sheets as well. So Jimmy thinks long and clear about this. He really wants to sleep now. He is sleepy, eepy, as you might say. He wants to see what the man means, so he says, I think your briefcase has bed sheets that are fresh and clean and dry. The man looks at him, opens his eyes, smile widens a bit more than it was before. He says, you are absolutely right. You are right, Jimmy. Jimmy was surprised even more now because the man said his name even though he never told him what his name was. This man seems to know more about Jimmy than Jimmy knows about Jimmy. So the man pulls up the briefcase from next to him and gives the handle to Jimmy and nods to him as if approving for him to open the briefcase. And when Jimmy went to open the briefcase, there was nothing inside other than dry, clean, fresh bed sheets. The man smiled at Jimmy and says he would like the briefcase back, but he can keep the sheets. So Jimmy takes the sheets, the man takes the briefcase, and off he goes into the darkness of the hallway again. Jimmy goes inside and sits on his bed with his brand new sheets. How could this man know my name if I never said my name to him? How could this man know I have troubles? Of course, he glanced over and saw that my bed was wet. But in order for him to already have gotten here with the bed sheets, he must have known beforehand that my bed is wet. He changes his sheets, gets into bed and turns off the lights. And as he goes to sleep that night, although very soundly, he wondered whether the man could have offered him a lot more than one good night's sleep, maybe even multiple good night's sleep. And as he goes into REM sleep, he dreamt about what he could have had from this man with a briefcase. And that concludes today's story. I hope you had a good time. I hope you are sleepy like Jimmy. But I hope that your bed sheets are dry. Anyway, good night. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.